Spectrovision Radio.
You wake up abruptly, jarringly. You race to the front door. You swing the door open and you bolt outside. You are called to look up into the sky. And when you do, you cannot believe what you see. You are completely breathless. Because in the air is not one, not 5, not even 50 UFOs, but a sky full of UFO. Craft every direction as far as you can see that definitely appear to not be earthly and not be human-made. Terrified and confused, you run back inside your house and you slam the door and lock it behind you. Your heart is racing. You make your way towards your bed. And then you wake up. Heart still racing, looking around your room. Was that just a dream? It seemed so real. So you cautiously make your way back to your front door. You slowly open it. You glide outside. Timidly, you look up into the sky and you see a clear, brisk, beautiful morning sky with birds singing. Confused, you close the door, lock it again for good measure, go back, crawl into bed, stare at your ceiling and think, was that a dream? There's no way that was a dream. That felt realer than real. Now, if you've had a similar dream, similar experience, don't worry, you're not alone. This has been reported by thousands of different people from all different walks of life. And typically when they explain this situation, this dream, they call it a vision. They say it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a message. It felt like a warning. It felt like a premonition. So let's talk about it. Hello friends, and thank you for joining me on another exciting episode of Conscious Observers. Today we're going to talk about the sky full of UFO phenomenon, as well as the gathering, the shift, new Earth, apocalypse, ontological shock, and the coming event that everyone is talking about. I know that sounds like a lot, but I think they're all describing the same thing. So we'll be able to simplify so many of these topics into one. Now, nothing about this video is going to be doom and gloom or scary. I'm going to try to navigate through this minefield in the most logical, positive way. There is something here. There is seemingly something coming. We are psychic antennas, and I think everybody can kind of feel it. But there's also a lot of fear out there, and uncertainty, and agendas that are capitalizing on this. So let's just talk about what we know. So going back into the 1980s, Robert Monroe's second book, Far Journeys, an amazing book. Please read all 3 of his books, and this will make a lot more sense. But at the end, the second to last chapter of Far Journeys, he has a chapter called The Gathering. And he talks about an event that changed his life. Every event changed his life and changed everyone who reads his book's lives. But this event was very significant because it also validated what he was doing on Earth with the Monroe Institute as very important and being guided by the others for a very specific reason. And we'll get into that. But let's talk about The Gathering, because not only did Robert Monroe have this happen to him, but Tom Campbell, very trusted, very respected, very honest Tom Campbell, who has more insight and knowledge and experience into the astral and other dimensions of reality than anybody on Earth, he also went to what's called The Gathering. He called it the Big Show. And actually the Monroe Institute has a course where they take you to Focus 35 where you can go to The Gathering. You can't just join off the street. It's like a black belt type thing. You have to work your way up. So I haven't taken Focus 35 yet because I have not made it to Focus 35, but this is a course that exists. a program that exists. So you can visit this gathering. But let me tell you what the gathering is, because this is just extraordinary. So in one of his travels, after he went to the future and they showed him a future probable timeline that would become way more certain if he fulfilled all of his earthly missions, one of which was the Monroe Institute. After this experience, one of his next experiences, one of his guides, BB, takes him to like what's called the gathering. So they zoom out and they're outside of Earth. At this point, they're in between Earth and the moon, looking down at Earth, and they see craft everywhere. The very first craft he sees is this like cylindrical silver craft that extends off like for miles, he says, and it has sort of an observation like kind of a lens type window on one of the ends, and it's obviously aimed at Earth, and they're watching Earth. And he asks his guide, is that a spaceship? And his guide's basically like, well, yeah, I mean, in your terms, it's not from Earth, it's not from this, they call it the TSI, the time-space illusion. That's what they call Earth. This is a time-space illusion. So he was told it's not from this time-space illusion, so we would call it a spacecraft or a spaceship. And then he notices hundreds more. And he's like, why are all these spaceships around Earth? Because they were all focused on Earth. And his guide tells him that they're here for what you call the big show. They're here to see this event that is going to happen that's going to not only change Earth and humanity forever, but also has ramifications for all the surrounding clusters, all the other like neighborhoods essentially in the cosmos. We're all interconnected, and especially in our local area. So they're all here because they want to observe what happens, because the result affects them as well. And when we get into what this result is, I mean, it's wild, guys. I mean, you'll see how this affects everybody. So let's get there. So it's explained to him like this, that there's a ancient Oriental symbol for crisis. And this Oriental symbol for crisis has two sub-symbols. It has danger and opportunity. Those are the two symbols that make up this one symbol. So it's pretty interesting that the symbol for crisis is 50% opportunity and 50% danger. So a crisis, we think of a crisis as bad. Oh no, I'm in a crisis. There's a crisis coming. We always think of bad. But when you think of Earth as a simulator for consciousness development, we use adversity. We use resistance. We use these crises as ways to build our character and to build our integrity and to see what we're made of and to learn and to grow and evolve. I use the analogy of like CrossFit for consciousness. Like, we purposely give ourselves resistance. And when you go to the gym, you purposely make things harder because that makes you stronger. So crisis should not be seen necessarily just as negative or doom and gloom. It's an opportunity. Okay, so he asks him, okay, so if this event that's coming is going to change everything. I mean, he was told that at this point we've reached the threshold. There's no way the event's not going to happen. And that it's equal points, opportunity and danger. So he's asked him first, okay, what's the danger? Like physical danger, mental danger, energetic danger, what is it? And he was basically told all of those are real probabilities if we go basically the danger route of the crisis, and that humans would retreat from being the dominant species on Earth and it eventually dissolve as a actual human consciousness altogether. So obviously that's not good. It's not what we want. Okay, so then he's like, okay, well, what is the opportunity part? This is where it gets really wild. So the opportunity part is that there is this, at this point they go from where they were kind of in between the moon and the Earth, so he could see the Earth really clear and he could see the spaceships around him. They zoom all the way out to where the Earth is just a pinpoint of light. And he's shown all of these other intelligences and beings and craft and everything that are just circling Earth as this like basically a huge ring that's out there. And that as soon as that happens, there's these like cascading fields of energy that are leaving Earth, and it's very chaotic and erratic. It's not in any sort of a recurring frequency or anything. And he said that he could tell that this was a new energy. A new energy was being born. And he's told, yes, that this event, the big show, is the birth of a new energy, and that all of these beings, intelligences, consciousnesses are coming to observe, because this only happens like once every 100 million years. It's very, very rare. And this one in particular is incredibly important because of its ramifications on everybody else. So there's this birth of a new energy. So what is this new energy? So if we look at Earth as a school, as a simulator for consciousness development, like in the last video, we talked about how every moment we have free will decisions to make, and when we make these free will decisions, it creates qualia, especially when emotions are involved. And that qualia is the individual subjective consciousness, right? So whenever you make a decision and you either have a good or bad outcome, or whatever the outcome is, you generate some like consciousness energy. You generate consciousness information. It's called qualia. And that goes up to your higher self and starts building out your soul. Your soul is your individual like file folder of consciousness. And you are building this out, and that's kind of one of the byproducts of this human Earth life experience and this consciousness simulator, is that the more you have goes at it, and more you play the game, the more lifetimes you have, you're building this file folder in the cosmic database, which is you. That's in the Akashic record, and it encompasses all of Earth. And it has everybody's file folder. There's all sorts of souls in there, right? Because everyone's playing this game. And the more times you play, the more information, and then you start defining your character, your personality, all that kind of stuff, right? That's awesome. Okay. Well, if you think about that collectively, because that's at an individual level, but that Akashic record, that cosmic database that's encompassing the Earth, has everybody's file folder on it with all of their conscious experiences, okay? And that makes the human conscious collective. So, whereas this is a school for individual consciousness development, it's also a school for the human collective conscious development. But at this point, that is just on this, cosmic database, and it's growing and it's evolving and developing. But what he's told, how this is explained to him in a way, is that when these energies converge, so there's going to be this convergence of energies, and there's going to be energies that have never converged before on Earth, and it's going to create this like amplification process, essentially, that could take that human conscious collective of information, of data, of qualia, and essentially birth a brand new energy out of it, a brand new life force out of all that. And the way it was suggested, a lot of this is, they can't be too specific, because these are future probabilities and they're not absolutely set in stone, which is why everybody's here to observe in the first place, because they don't exactly know how it's going to go down. But then also, if they say too much, then it alters the trajectory, and that would defeat the entire purpose of this entire thing that we're doing here. It'd be like if your kid went to school and you just gave him all the answers to every single test. Well, he would never have to learn anything. And what would be the point of going to school, right? So some of this is a little fuzzy, but essentially what he's told is that the human collective would unite, and there would be this unified human consciousness. So don't think about like hive mind in the sense of like the Borg or something negative. Think about it as a way to break out. He's told we can actually transcend this time-space illusion. So this, our little physical matter reality that we're in, we can transcend that and break out of that as a human consciousness. So he's told essentially that this is a school for compressed learning, and that graduates of this school are so impressive that when they're out there in the wider cosmos, in the astral, and they encounter other intelligences, other consciousnesses that maybe have never been to Earth, have never graduated from Earth, or don't even know what Earth is, those consciousnesses are always so blown away by the quality of the consciousness of the Earth life graduate that at that point, all they want to do is become one themselves. It's a very impressive thing. So there's a point for all this. we're growing and evolving. And once you graduate through the system, you have what's called super love. And that's why we have all the adversity and all the trauma and all the stuff that we have, is it forces us to understand and empathize and form what's called super love, which is this incredibly powerful force, the most powerful force in the universe. So that super love is, at an individual level, the driving force behind going through all the stuff that we go through on Earth here, dealing with all the weirdness and BS and adversity and scariness and all the stuff that we deal with, is to eventually obtain super love and be this ascended master level of consciousness. Okay, Now imagine that at a global level. Imagine that at this, you take 8 billion souls, add them together, multiply that, take this new energy source that is converging on Earth, mixing with all the other energy sources, and it births this new energy source, and it takes that human consciousness, that human wisdom, that human creativity, the human, humor, the human super love, all the elements that make humans so freaking interesting and special. And then you create this cosmic archetype essentially out of it. And that cosmic archetype transcends the boundaries of space-time. It's outside of the illusion, and it is a cosmic force at that point. Sort of like, how we give archetypes to different planets, like Mars is, war and conflict, and Venus is love and relationship, those kinds of things. Earth would have its own, almost like be like this cosmic deity. And that seems to be sort of the point of all this. We get lost in the granular, individual experiences on Earth, but there's actually a collective point as well. Now, this event that's supposed to be coming up, it has to do with that, has to do with this opportunity for us to unite collectively as a unified human consciousness and transcend all of these boundaries. Wow, I mean, that's pretty big deal. And you can see how that would affect the neighboring energy systems, because it's almost like godlike powers and abilities. But that's if we come out on the good side. That's the opportunity side of the crisis. So you can see why this is such a interesting event for these celestial beings, because they're coming here to watch this. Is Earth just going to kind of fade away? And is humanity going to retreat as the dominant species on Earth and just sort of become a nothing burger? Or is it going to transcend all of the boundaries of space-time and become a cosmic god that has significant influence and effect and impact on the entire surrounding energy systems? I mean, you can see why this would be such a important event for people to watch. Now, what does it mean for us? Well, it means an awful lot, because this collective event is just that. It's collective. This isn't going to be decided by one person or a government or one action. This is a collective event. So it seems like there's a certain sort of a tipping point that we need to hit as far as our human consciousness goes, our level of consciousness or quality of consciousness. And people have been talking about this for a long time, the shift into 5D. Dolores Cannon talked about the new Earth splitting, almost like a cell divides, and that, that there will be an old Earth that's operating under a lower frequency and a new Earth that's at a higher frequency. And you don't get in a spaceship and go there. It's just like, it's a split. It's a divide. It's like you just turn the station on a radio to a brand new station. That old station still exists, but now there's this new crystal clear, amazing station. And, she talks about that even in the Bible. They talk about like the apocalypse, and they talk about the rapture, and that's kind of like a frequency vibrational type thing, good and evil. And certain people are kind of cold and other people are sort of saved. And I mean, this is talked about by so many people out there, but it's because it seems to be a thing. It's that information is sort of not leaked, but just sort of out there. And we are cosmic, psychic antennas, and we pick up on this stuff. So going back to how I started this whole talk with the sky full of UFOs. Now, I've had this vision. My wife's had this vision. My wife is a hypnotist and does past life regression and, channeling. She's a natural channel and takes people to their higher self and does all these types of things. And she's very tuned into this world. And she talks about these types of events. She's had these visions multiple times. And so many other people have, especially in the world of, hypnotic regression, QHHT, that kind of stuff. This is very common for people to get in a hypnotic state and see a sky full of UFOs. It's very common when you're sleeping, because you're in that hypnagogic state and you're kind of, your left brain goes to sleep and you sort of tap more into the symbolic, intuitive, like cosmic side of things. And people see this, and they're seeing, I think it's so interesting. The reason I even brought it up is because they don't see one UFO. I mean, sometimes you do, obviously, but like there's so many people that have this recurring dream, which they call a vision, of a sky full of UFOs. And that's so specific because we don't typically think of a sky full of UFOs. We typically think of one UFO. But so many people see the sky full of UFOs. And then Tom Campbell and Robert Monroe both had this experience of the gathering, and the gathering is not a sky full of UFOs, but a space surrounding Earth full of UFOs, what we call UFOs, just craft. Okay, so why I think this is so important is because I was at the Psy Games a couple weeks ago, and I don't want to say his name because he didn't give me authorization to, and he's a big guy, but he was one of the original, you know, like Project Stargate, remote viewing guys, right? Big deal. Awesome human being. And he was just talking to me about, you know, at this point in his life, he's really focusing on what's called ontological shock. Okay, now this is a guy that has every accreditation, credential in the world, and I mean, has basically done everything, just, you know, a life very well lived. And he's focusing on ontological shock. And I thought that was very interesting because he knows a lot of things. He's read into a lot of programs and stuff. So what is ontological shock, and why are people like him? Because it's not just him. There's many people out there in the intelligence communities and the government, different walks of life, and a lot of these people that are in the kind of UFO programs that are very high up in these programs, the more they learn, they start talking about ontological shock. And you've heard people talk about like controlled disclosure versus catastrophic disclosure and things of that nature. So what does that mean? Well, ontological shock is essentially a shock to your belief system. So just to put it in very easy to understand terms, say somebody believes something to their core, and then at some point that's ripped away from them and they're shown that that might have been a lie or fabricated. The shock, the sudden ontological shock that they experience could be very overwhelming for that person, and it can cause all sorts of, you know, psychological, emotional issues. So we like to think that more information the better, and we all want the truth. Well, what people at the higher levels are starting to investigate is what would happen if, on a collective scale, what would happen if there was some sort of an event that signaled to every single human on Earth at the same time that maybe we're not alone in the universe, and maybe there's some sort of impending event coming. How would people handle this? I mean, you got to take into account, you know, different age ranges, different, you know, maturity grades, you know, different belief systems and religions, and all of these things factor in. So whereas it's real easy to say, you know, just show us the truth, we want the truth, we can handle the truth, I don't know if people have actually sat there and run through a simulation in their head of what the truth really means in this case. I do my job to kind of roll out little crumbs and tidbits and have people zoom out and look at life from a wider perspective, and, you know, widen your aperture and kind of see things from, okay, maybe we're not just this physical person walking around a physical world, and when we die it's over and we're the only things of any sort of significant intelligence in the universe, and this is it kind of deal. Zoom out of that mindset and think, okay, maybe I'm more than my physical body. Maybe I have a counterpart that is in the astral that is kind of orchestrating and guiding me, and maybe there's beings above that, and maybe it keeps going, and maybe in the grand scheme of things we're actually pretty small and maybe new, and maybe we're incredibly important, but maybe we're also incredibly disposable, and maybe life in the cosmos is so complex and there's so many different realities that even the beings at the top that are above the things that are above us don't even know fully what reality is, and what the point of life is, and whose source is, and what's beyond all this, and where we came from, and what's before and what's after. When you really start to rack your brain about these things, it gets confusing, it gets scary sometimes, but it also gets incredibly exciting, because it seems like we are creating this story as we go. Like, these hundreds or thousands of spacecraft from different, that have manifested here from different energy systems and different time periods throughout our cosmos, seem to be incredibly interested in what's going on here. And they don't seem to know exactly what's going to happen next. And I think that's exciting, because we are in the driver's seat. So going back to the importance of all this, our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions are what are going to decide the outcome. remember, there's 50% chance it's a dangerous event and 50% chance it's the opportunity of a lifetime. And that part's up to us. So I think that's super exciting. But then when you turn on the news, turn on Twitter, God forbid, you see people like Avi Loeb and all these people out there talking about 3i Atlas coming, and is it a spacecraft that's gonna, come to Earth and invade us, and all these terrible, horrible things. And it's like, man, I'm sitting here thinking, 40 years ago, Robert Monroe's telling us that our Earth is surrounded by spaceships, and some of the highest people in the intelligence communities and stuff trained at the Monroe Institute, trained specifically personally with Robert Monroe. They know all this information. None of this is new. So the quote-unquote aliens are already here and have been here our entire lives. So why are we fearing an alien invasion? I don't think we realize what aliens are. And now I understand. I go into all the literature. I understand there seems to be a gray human hybrid program. There's lots of data and evidence for that. I know people that claim to be a part of it and have had abductions and things of that nature. So I'm not going to discount any of that. But I also think that a lot of that's taken off-world. I don't think that Earth is this place that everyone in the cosmos is fighting over. I think that what's happening here is very significant because it's happening holistically, and that it's part of this cosmic process, and they're very infatuated and interested in that. I don't think they're coming here to invade us and to take over our planet. I think that there's trillions and trillions, maybe an infinite amount of planets out there, and I don't know why they'd wait until there's 8 billion of us and that we're all armed and we have space lasers and nukes pointed in every single direction. It seems like they probably would have done this whole invasion thing 100 years ago when we had muskets and cannonballs. But, so I don't put any weight behind that. But there is this constant fear that permeates of this impending doom type of a scenario. And that's one of the things that I just want to talk about, because when you actually look at like the word apocalypse, because this is getting thrown around a lot now. People think that we're in the end of days and things like this. I had a friend message me the other day, and I don't have, I respect everyone's privacy, so I'm not going to use their name, but, a prominent person who I very much respect, who had a life-changing event where they were delivered a message that was very apocalyptic and talked about, kind of time running out and that we had our opportunity and didn't make it and these kinds of things, but then also offered this glimmer of hope at the end that, we need to essentially stop focusing on outer space, start focusing on inner space, take responsibility for our actions, basically level up our quality of consciousness, focus on more things like creativity and art and things that make humans unique and special. And if we do that, then we'll be okay. So there was like this apocalyptic message that was also concluded with a message of hope and peace if we get back to doing what humans do, which is do human things. There's certain gifts that we have that make us special. And I guess while I'm on this, let me tell you a quick story from another one of Robert Monroe's books, because it shines some light on this. The only other time in all of his books, and I mean, he's traveling the stars, he's traveling through all the different dimensions, and of course he encountered different non-human intelligences. But the only other time he encountered like a craft, like a physical craft, was this one time where there was a UFO in space that he encountered. So he kind of makes contact with this UFO. He's in the astral out-of-body state. And he sees this like traditional saucer. And he's, kind of, hey, what are you doing here? Kind of telepathically. And a door opens and he's able to go on board this craft. And on board the craft, there's this guy, his name was Fields. He was a famous comedian way back in the day. I mean, Robert Monroe was writing about all this in the 1950s. So this guy was famous in like the 30s or 40s. And he had a top hat on and very, specific look. And, Robert Monroe was like, oh, hey, I know you. I've seen you in the movies and stuff. You're a famous comedian. Like, what the heck are you doing in a UFO? And the guy tells him, he's like, oh, well, I don't really look like this. I'm just using this to get into character. He's like, I actually am an exporter from your planet. Robert Monroe's like, what could you export from Earth? Like, what is it we have that you don't have? I mean, you have the ability, you have the spaceship, you can change, form and everything. You're talking to me telepathically. Like, what could we have? And the guy tells him, he says, well, you take it for granted. He's like, but if you don't have it, you cannot realize how important it is and how special it is. And Robert Monroe's like, okay, tell me, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, humor. It's humor. He's like, when you live in the vastness of space and you have the types of knowledge these beings have, and you have the awareness that they have, and you have the longevity that they have, at a certain point, space gets very lonely and cold and scary. And this guy says that he uses these UFOs, comes to Earth, and basically exports humor. And I know this sounds just like Monsters, Inc., but this was all written decades before Monsters, Inc. And it makes you wonder where these ideas come from. So he says that he exports humor because where he's from, they don't have humor, and it's the most valuable resource to them, bar none, period. So whereas we think about, oh, we want money, and we want gold, and we want power and influence and immortality and all these things, these guys are like, oh, no, we just want to laugh. We just want to have some fun. On a separate note, JK Ultra did a past life regression with my friend Sarah Cosme, and she was able to get a firsthand experience from the Greys that are visiting Earth. And one of the things that they said that they visit Earth for is to sort of simulate, almost like how we put on a VR headset and we play games, that they kind of do that through the human experience to experience things like, they said one of their favorite things is amusement parks. They love roller coasters. And we don't think about this kind of stuff because we think about gray aliens bad, right? But like, you have to look at it like, if all these things are true and all these things exist, that they're just different life forms or different consciousnesses that are from different origins, and they grew up in different ways, and they have different ways of seeing reality and different things that they've been exposed to and whatever. And to them, human Earth life is ridiculously fascinating, and they find so much joy. Like they're trying to develop and process emotions, and one of the things that they enjoy doing, according to this past life regression, is visiting amusement parks. And according to Robert Monroe, when he was encountering this entity and this flying saucer, they export our humor because where they're from, they don't have it. Okay, so I talk about these things because we, being born into this human Earth life experience, just expect all that stuff. We think, okay, what's the big deal? Of course, humor. Of course, we do things for fun. We ride roller coasters, and we take our dirt bikes out, and we go surfing. Of course, we do these things. They're fun. But that's because that's how we experience reality. This is all a part of our world here. But if those aren't a part of your world, then those things are incredibly fascinating. I mean, just think about that. Think about what a roller coaster is, and observe a bunch of humans on a roller coaster scaring themselves completely senseless and paying money to do it, and then having fun and getting off and hugging and high-fiving and then running around and doing it again. I mean, to an outside intelligence, that would be very hard to understand. So they like to try to see it from our point of view. So is this stuff true or not? That's up to you to decide. But I've heard so many stories like this from so many people and so many credible people that it makes you really zoom out and realize this cosmos is full of life, full of intelligence, full of consciousness. And each one is sort of, like John Archibald Wheeler says, it's a participatory universe. You're rendering your own reality in your own way through your own lens. And, at a certain point, it's good to shift your perspective and see it from other people's points of view. And Earth is a very interesting place for a lot of reasons, and humans are very, very interesting for a lot of reasons. And I think that we're attracting a lot of attention because of that. And, on top of that, there seems to be this upcoming, event that has a lot of people, even more interested in what's going to happen. Because if we're this like super interesting reality show and we're about to either get canceled or we're about to get, an upgrade, well, I mean, people are sort of invested in that, it seems. So I see this, I talked about the ontological shock and the catastrophic disclosure. In the UFO world, there's two camps. Essentially, there's, catastrophic disclosure and controlled disclosure. And basically the difference is catastrophic disclosure is like, hey, just rip the Band-Aid off, tell us the truth, we can take it. And, controlled disclosure or slow drip disclosure is basically like, okay, we don't want to cause too many waves. I mean, this stuff is heavy, so let's just give them little bitty bits and pieces, little breadcrumbs. And that seems to be what they've been doing for 100 years And now they seem to be picking up the pace. And I think that's very interesting because people are throwing around all these dates. I mean, Chris Bledsoe talking about, I think it was Easter 2026, at the, when the red star Regulus is in the gaze of the Sphinx on Easter, the lady will bestow a new knowledge to humanity. That thing that everyone's talking about. What is that? Is that some sort of a mass, event that's going to wake up the world? People talk about 2027. Lou Elizondo, a bunch of different people in the UFO world talk about that as being this, John Ramirez from CIA, about this next, big wake up event. People talk about the 2030s. I've heard, Jason Bashir's with Archaics goes into depth about the cyclical cataclysm, and 2046 being the return of the Phoenix, and that's going to be the big deal. I study human design, and Ra Uru talks about 2027 becoming the beginning of this whole new wave of humans and this shift in humanity. So that's just 2 years from now. So, I guess the consistent thing, because people have been making these claims and stuff for forever, is that there seems to be a little more consensus on that something is coming up soonish. I'm not talking about tomorrow or today or next month or maybe even next year, but like soon. It seems that we're converging. And you can just kind of feel it because we have this convergence of we have a technological singularity and a consciousness singularity, and aliens, and all these things are kind of coming, it seems like at once, and it seems like they're all on their way. It doesn't seem like they're here yet, but it seems like it's coming, something's gonna change. And even remote viewers, there's a guy named Stephen Schwartz who does these huge collective remote viewing things. He has a thing called Project 2050, where he took, it was 4,400 people and had them remote view 2050, and then he piles through the data. It's tens of thousands of sheets of data to try to find the overlap and the threads of stuff. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint things because when people are remote viewing, they don't have a lot of context in the future. So say they remote view something and he finds all this overlap. All these people are saying the same thing. Well, he just knows about that thing. He doesn't necessarily know what led to that thing. But one of the things that the 2050 project showed him was that they were just now getting back to normal after some big event, okay? And so he's pouring through the data now trying to figure out what the big event was. He thinks it might have to do with the sun, and that goes along with what a lot of other people, like Ben Davidson, talks about the micronova, and all these different people that are pointing to the sun. And I think that's super interesting because I talk a lot about the sun being a portal for neutrinos, which deliver information to this world. So basically you have the non-physical and the physical world, and there has to be some sort of a data stream that goes between the two, and there has to be a modem of sorts, that basically modulates that data. And I believe that's what our sun is. And neutrinos are the carrier wave that kind of creates this time-space illusion. So in that case, the sun, which was always revered and idolized by ancient cultures as the god and the giver of wisdom and life and consciousness, would be the source of our consciousness. So if there was going to be some event that shifted us, people talk about this big shift, and people talk about splitting to new earth, and people talk about this ascension into 5D, and people talk about all of these things, the gathering, and how this is going to catapult humanity into a unified, human consciousness that will become this cosmic force. Well, it just bears the reason that the sun would be a big part of this, because the sun is our grow lamp for our garden. And I believe that the sun is directly related to our human consciousness, our personal consciousness, our collective consciousness, and all the information that is delivered to us. That's why I'm in the sun all the time. If you lay out in the sun, they call them light codes. It's almost impossible to lay out in the sun and not get, some sort of a download. I even have a neutrino meditation exercise that I do, where I basically give myself the subconscious programming at night, go to bed, wake up in the morning, go out in the sun, and retrieve the neutrino information, which delivers the message to me. All that will be in the Soul Sync course. But and then Tim Taylor, who's written about in Diana Psalko's book, come to find out, she always called him Tyler D, but come to find out Tim Taylor, who was one of the highest people in NASA's history and the intelligence world. I mean, this guy is off the charts. He has patented all these things and done all these amazing things and made gazillions of dollars. One of the ways that he does it is by doing, I think he calls it the 8-1 sleep protocol, where he sleeps for 8 hours, wakes up, sleeps for another hour, kind of gives himself a sort of subconscious program like I do before bed. And then as soon as he wakes up, he goes and sits on his sun porch under the sun, drinks a gallon of water, and lets the sun codes bring and deliver the information to him. And he gets all these ahas and insights, and then he patents products and makes billions of dollars. So it seems to work. Proof's in the pudding, right? So the sun really seems to be a very important thing, okay? That's why we need to stop cloud seeding and trying to reflect it and putting sunscreen on and hiding indoors and doing all the crazy things that we do. Sun good, go outside, okay? That's the lesson from this video. But seriously, like this coming event, some of the people, and I say some, a lot of the people that have talked about the sky full of UFOs in these hypnotic regression type sessions also describe something very, very interesting. They describe a northern lights type of a sheen, a fog, this light that basically comes out of the sky. So imagine the northern lights coming down and touching the earth. And when it touches the earth, it rolls along the surface of the earth. And as it rolls along and over the people, something happens. Now, different people have described the different after effects of this, but a common thing that they say is that after that point, you see all the ships, and that some of the ships even come down in kind of a rapturous type of a way, and that the different ships are here to pick up their different sort of star seeds, different people that are a part of their team or whatever, and that the rest of the humans are kind of zombified, and that there's a whole operation that they've been training for this, and all this stuff happens. And I know that sounds wild, and I'm just, you know, grazing over it because it's actually very in depth. There's a lot of information out there about this operation that happens whenever the shift happens, and how, you know, people have been getting guidance in their dreams about how to fly ships and how to board the ships and how to, you know, kind of corral people and how to orchestrate these things. And they're getting this guidance and training in their sleep so that when this happens, they know what to do. This is being reported by lots of people and lots of very sane people, okay? So I feel confident saying it because I know some people are going to hear me say things like that and be like, Jordan's lost it. But other people are going to be like, oh my God, I've had that dream. I've had a dream where, you know, a ship came down and I was helping people. Okay, now come this way. Now go in that line. I'll go on board the ship, and these types of things. And what they talk about is it's not like a invasion or anything. It's more of an extraction. They're taking their own, or sometimes they're actually just taking the people off Earth long enough for the changes to happen to Earth and then bringing them back. But there's different things, but it's almost always accompanied by this northern lights type of an effect, like this aurora that rolls in like fog, and when that hits the people, it changes everybody. Now, is this just a dream element? I don't know, but that signifies to me that there's some sort of a shift in the sun. Something's happening with the sun to cause this, because the sun is what causes our northern lights. So it makes me think that the sun is way more important than we're told, and that it's going to play a major role in the upcoming shift, or whatever this event is that so many people are convinced is going to happen. So, you know, I wanted to throw this video out there because there's so much doom and gloom and so much fear associated with it. But the more you actually, you know, peer through all of that and just start reviewing the data, the testimonies, listen to people that have had these visions and events, listen to the hypnotic practitioners that have had multiple people have these visions and get their sense of it, it's usually a very hopeful thing, because it usually indicates that there is like a leveling up that is going to happen. And obviously, like what Robert Monroe was told, the symbol for crisis is opportunity and danger. So there's always an element of danger, and there's always that possible negative outcome. But the empowering thing, and the important thing that we cannot forget, is that we, the human, the conscious observer, is in charge, is in control. That this is not a set in stone thing. The event might be set in stone. The convergence of energies on Earth might be set in stone. the fact that humanity will change, that change is coming, that might be set in stone, but the outcome is not. It's a choose your own adventure game, and we, through our actions, through our free will decisions every single day, through our thoughts, through our feedback, are we learning our lessons? Are we getting rid of our karmic loops? Are we treating people with love and compassion? Are we basically leveling up our consciousness? Are we making our higher selves proud? All of those things are what's going to determine at a collective global level whether we unify and transcend time-space into a cosmic, unified human consciousness and do really, really, really big things. Do things way bigger than yourself. Be a part of something way bigger than yourself. Or do we go the other way? I don't even want to think about the other way, because I say burn the boats. There's only one way. We're going forward. This is an opportunity. There's always danger, but use the danger to stay motivated and inspired. So I think that this coming shift, whatever it may be, is going to be amazing. That's what I think. Let me know what you think, guys. Thank you for listening so much. Please like and share this, because I want to hear other people's experiences. And the more people that watch this video, the more people that can share their experiences. Hopefully they leave them in the comments so that we can all see and we can all share our experiences and we can all grow together. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Peace.